Hello everybody, it is KingCake57 or KC57 and welcome to a slightly different video. Today I'm not going to be trying to kill the Ender Dragon or play any mini games on any servers. Nope. After being inspired by the amazing budget gaming PC community, I wanted to try my hand at building a budget Minecraft gaming PC for as little money as I could. So I did, and what you see before you is the result. A $150-ish budget gaming machine consisting entirely of used parts off eBay that can run Minecraft as well as a few other titles at respectable settings and frame rates. So let's get to it. To start off, I'm going to give you guys a brief story of how I built this machine. The journey started way back in August of 2017 when I found this old Dell optiplex 380 on eBay for just $11.07. It had an Intel Core 2 Duo E7500 dual-core CPU running at 2.98 GHz, just 2 gigs of DDR3 RAM, Windows 7 pre-installed, and Intel integrated 41 graphics. In its current state, the system was still capable of basic things like web browsing and stuff like that, but you can forget about running any games more demanding than the original Far Cry. When I tried to play Minecraft, I could only get it running at 900p at around 30 FPS with a render distance of only 4 chunks. So, not that great. And this is with the Optifine mod installed. The only other thing I ran was the 3D Mark Ice Storm test, which gave me a graphics score of 7,314 and a physics or CPU score of 13,713. This will be important later, but moving on now, the next thing I did was spend the next 3 months looking for used parts on eBay to upgrade this machine with to make it a more capable gaming PC. I won't bore you with all the details, so I'll just list off all the main components, and it's worth keeping in mind that when buying a pre-built system like this one, there are some limitations when it comes to upgrades, like the motherboard, for example, which uses the LGA 775 socket for the CPU, meaning I would have to stick to CPUs that would fit only in that socket. So with that in mind, the first thing I got was a new CPU to replace the old dual-core E7500. I ended up with what is one of the most powerful CPUs available for socket LGA 775. Released in early 2007 at a price of $850, the Intel Core 2 Quad Q6600 was an enthusiast option at the time, running at 2.4 GHz on all 4 of its cores. And the best part is, the CPU is so popular on the used market that I can almost guarantee that you'll be able to find one for $20 or less. I found mine for just $9.25. To power that CPU and the new graphics card I plan to add in later, the original 255-watt Dell OEM power supply had to go. Now you should always buy a high-quality power supply, even in a budget system like this one, because if the power supply dies, it can take the entire system with it. So I ended up with an old Antec 380-watt 80+ Earthwatts power supply that should be able to power the rest of the system. I got mine for just $16.75. Moving to the RAM, this is where I hit my first real problem. The motherboard only had 2 RAM slots on it, and to make matters worse, they were DDR3, and thanks to the insane prices of DDR3 even on the used market, it was actually cheaper for me to buy a different LGA 775 Dell motherboard that supported DDR2 and then buy 8 gigs of DDR2, rather than to just buy 8 gigs of DDR3 in the first place. So I ended up doing that. I found a Dell Optiplex 780 motherboard for just $14.96, and the RAM for another $20. The only slight problem was that the I/O on the back of the motherboard, that's the audio out, Ethernet, and USB, yeah, they didn't line up at all with the pre-existing holes in the case, which is why I had to get a friend to cut a hole with an angle grinder out in the back of the computer case. It's not pretty, but it'll work. Couple of more things. I bought a 3TB WD Green hard drive off eBay to replace the 320 gig drive that came with the system, though it should be noted that this is entirely up to you if you want to replace the included drive. I just needed a bit more space. After that, the last thing I needed was a GPU, and after 7 failed bids on eBay, I finally won an auction for this AMD R7 360 graphics card from Sapphire. This card released in June of 2015 as a mid-range card and features 768 stream processors, 2 gigs of GDDR5 memory, and a core clock of 1100 MHz. At launch, this card was around $110, but since I bought it used, I got mine for just $58. When I got the card, I found out it was actually too big to fit in the case with how the PCI slot was laid out. It set the card way too close to the CPU cooler on this motherboard. So I just removed the plastic shroud on the front of the card and added a cardboard support bracket so that the card wouldn't fall out of the PCI slot. This ended up working out a lot better than I actually thought it would, and it's actually really sturdy. The last few finishing touches were a cheap Windows 10 OEM key that I got off eBay for just $5.67, and an old Sound Blaster Live 5.1 PCI sound card, which I got at just $3.24 to replace the terrible onboard Dell motherboard audio. And that's it. After I installed Windows 10, I could finally jump into some games to see how my upgraded machine would perform. Starting off with Minecraft at fancy settings, fast lighting, a render distance of 12 chunks, and Optifine installed, just exploring the world in single player gave me an average of 118 FPS with 1% lows at 52 and 0.1% lows at 34. And I have to say that even while recording with OBS, which is what you can see right now, the game was still really playable. So as a budget Minecraft YouTube starting machine, it's not doing too bad. Moving on to my custom Minecraft benchmark, which was designed to simulate an extremely demanding world with tons of redstone, fire, smoke particles, and large amounts of different lighting, the PC was still able to pull off an average of 50 FPS with lows at 31 and 28. Finally, playing a game of Turf Wars on the Mineplex server yielded an average of 163 FPS with 1% lows and 0.1% lows at 65 and 48 respectively. So this PC can handle Minecraft really well, which is good because that's the whole reason it exists. But KC, I hear you say, we all knew that this PC could handle Minecraft. I mean, the Raspberry Pi can handle Minecraft. But what about real games? Well, first off, Minecraft is a real game, and secondly, I don't know. So let's find out, shall we? I'll kick it off with Skyrim Special Edition at 1080p with a medium preset. This gave me 44 FPS on average with 1% lows at 28 FPS and 0.1% lows at 22 FPS, which means that there really wasn't that much stutter at all, even while standing on the bridge looking back at Riverwood. And it definitely performs much better than the original Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions of this game. Next we have Cry Primal, at the time the newest in the series. And at 1080p with low settings, I achieved an average of 36 FPS with lows at 24 and 20, which indicates some stutter, but really it's not that bad, especially compared to both the console editions of this game, which run at what I can only guess is high 20s on average. Moving on to a personal favorite of mine, CSGO, and here due to the highly competitive nature of this game, at 1080p I turned every setting down as low as they could go in order to maximize the frame rate. This gave me an average of 101 FPS with lows at 48 and 36 FPS, which is strange because I never really felt a big dip in FPS except for say when the map reset and the FPS tanked for a few seconds at spawn. So as you can see by the gameplay, the FPS really never went that low, even in heated combat. CSGO is definitely playable. But can it run Crysis? Well, to find out, I loaded up Crysis 3, and at 1080p with low settings and high texture details, I got an average of 55 FPS with lows at 26 FPS and 16 FPS. These percentile figures are kinda low, indicating some stutter, but come on, it's Crysis 3. This game stutters on everything. Continuing with the relentless games, I loaded up Battlefield 1, which, side note, is the newest game I tested, and at 1080p with low settings, I hit 36 FPS on average with lows at 18 and 13. So yeah, there was some stutter, and I'll leave it up to you to decide if this game is playable or not. Here though, we can see that the CPU is the bottleneck, because while playing this game, the CPU never really dropped below 100% utilization. Dialing it back a little, the next game I tested was Dirt Rally. At 1080p with the high preset, I got an average of 55 FPS with the 1% lows at 41 FPS and 0.1% lows at 39 FPS. This game by far ran the most consistent out of all of the ones tested today. Next I tested Rocket League, which at the highest settings ran at 67 FPS on average with 1% lows at 51 FPS and 0.1% lows at 34 FPS. This PC would be perfect as a budget Rocket League machine. Finally, to give you guys an example of how much an improvement came from upgrading this machine, I ran the same 3D Mark Ice Storm test again. And wow, would you look at that. The graphics score went from an underwhelming 7,314 when using the integrated graphics to 117,147 with the R7 360. And the physics score as well went from a usable 13,713 with the E7500 to a very respectable 35,894 with the Core 2 Quad Q6600. So in conclusion, I'm really happy with how this PC performed, and this system would make a great first PC for someone just trying to get their foot in the door. Really, the hardest things to find when building a system like this one is 1, the starting base system, and 2, the graphics card. So have some patience and shop around a bit because there are some great deals to be had on the used market out there. Now, it should be noted that with more demanding games such as Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Assassin's Creed Origins, this PC really just can't keep up. And it's the CPU bottlenecking the GPU. So if you were to try and build something like this, I would try and go with an old LGA 1155 based pre-built instead of the LGA 775 that I have, so that you could at least have an upgrade path for the CPU all the way up to the Ivy Bridge era. But anyway, we're not all fortunate enough to be able to buy the latest and greatest PC hardware, and that's okay. That just means that you're going to have to shop around a bit more when trying to build your gaming PC. Just don't let the price or the difficulty be the reason you don't join the master race, because really, it's not that expensive or hard. We also have hundreds of thousands of exclusive indie titles and almost infinite backwards compatibility. Sure, the support from some developers may not be the best, but hey, at least we don't have software overlords that ruin our great titles. Minecraft Bedrock Edition. So on behalf of the amazing PC community and Master Race, no matter how much you know, or how much dough you got, in the end, we would all love to have you around for a spot of PC gaming. So guys, that's all I got for today. This video took way too long to make, and at this point, it's been almost 5 months in the work. So I definitely hope you guys enjoyed, and maybe even learned a little. Anyway, if you want to learn more about building used PCs, I can leave a few channels linked in the video description that you should definitely go check out if you need some help. Finally, if you have any helpful advice or constructive criticism, then you can let me know down in the comments below. I will read all of them, don't worry. But unfortunately, that's all I got time for today. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and stay tuned, because these budget PC showcases are far from over. But for now, I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye!